It has been so hard to get this video done. I didn't even change my shirt for this. Welcome back to Movie Munchies. I'm Alexis. If you've never been here before, we watch things and we eat them. Listen, I doubt it. But if you were someone who was waiting on this one, I'm sorry. All I have to say is take care of yourself. Mental health is important. Yaddy do and all that jazz. I'm not going to go into the details. Here we go, though. If you are new here, we watched all of the How to Train Your Dragon movies. Today we're making a cake for them. Let's do this. The cake part. We decided to go with the Apfelkuchen.
German apple cake.
When I was researching, I learned that I believe it's typically made with yeast, so it's more like a bread cake. However, I found a recipe. Sarah, she had one that did not call for yeast. So I was back and forth between this one and another one, but I ultimately decided to go with this one just to make it simpler for myself. Here we go. Let's start making this thing. What I had decided to do was put a streusel. Yeah. I decided to put a streusel on top of this cake. So I started by making that part, and it was sugar, flour, cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of salt, and some lemon peel. Like lemon zest, sorry. And then I cut up some butter and just cut that into the mixture like you would. It's another one of those like strawberry crumble situations that I did for the Mean Girls cupcake. Or what was it that I just did? I just did it. The little pecan filling that I put in the over the garden wall cake. So I cut all those together and then mixed it up with my hands until it was a crumbly texture. Then I went in with the dry ingredients for the cake, which was flour, baking powder, salt, and I believe that was it. And then the wet ingredients was butter and sugar, which of course I let flurf up for a while. I'm already like exhausted. It was a push to sit down and do this. Okay, this cake, because I think they usually call for, just pretend you didn't see that. Because this cake did not have yeast, it needed even more of a rising agent, which is why there's such a high egg content in this cake. So for the ratios, it was a lot of eggs, like a lot more eggs than you usually put in a cake, which did tighten up the crumb of it and made it more dense. But I did the wet, dry alternating, putting in what am I even saying? I'm so tired. I decided to go with 8-inch and 6-inch cakes. I used springform pans because that is what they suggested. And the reason for that is because of this right here. We're putting the apple slices on top. It's not pretty, but listen, it's supposed to be eaten naked, but I wasn't doing that with my cake, so I was not worried about how pretty or ugly they looked. But I just put some apple slices down on top and then covered that up with the streusel that I made. I cut up obviously way too many apples for the amounts of cake that I made, but I ended up like sauteing them down and eating them with some waffles later, which was really tasty. So I put those in the oven, it was like 350, again for varying times. They were pushing like an hour, so they had different bake temps though, because one was smaller than the other. I did this whole process twice so that I could have 2 layers for each tier, because I did a bottom tier and a top tier. They turned out quite beautiful and definitely very, very dense. I could tell right away. I also didn't realize until later that there was no like inherent flavor inside of the cake, which ultimately didn't matter because there was so much flavor everywhere else. But anyways, moving on to the buttercream. I did the same German buttercream that I usually do, but I decided to spice it up and add a little bit. I beated the butter. I said beat it. Yes, I did. I beat the butter until it was nice and smooth, and then what I did was added some cream cheese to the mixture. I started just with 2 packs because I wasn't sure how much cream cheesy I wanted the frosting to be. I ended up going back later and adding 2 more packs because I made a lot of buttercream, okay? And to the butter and cream cheese whip, I added the powdered sugar. And then once that was mixed in very messily, I'm always making a mess in these videos. I mean, are you really baking if you're not making a mess? I added the custard after that. Same custard I always make for this same buttercream that usually does not have cream cheese in it. I just feel like it gives the buttercream a more round flavor. Anyways, to that I also added cinnamon. And it was, once again, a lot for my stand mixer. And this was where I decided I wanted to be more cream cheesy, so I added the other cream cheeses. A little more cinnamon and a little more sugar, which definitely made it way too much for my hand stand. Way too much for my stand mixer to handle. But the buttercream, the cream cheese German, the cream cheese, cream cheese cinnamon German buttercream, the German cream cheese cinnamon buttercream, the German cinnamon cream cheese buttercream. You know what I'm trying to say. It was really tasty. And again, one of those things that was like, yeah, that's gonna go really, really good with the apple cake, you know? Jesus Christ, girl. Hang on. Wait. Okay. Moving on to squishing these layers together and getting them frosted. Since I couldn't level the tops right because it had all that streusel goodness on there. I did take that little crust off the bottom, if that's what you want to call it. And then I did a ring of the cream cheese buttercream around it and added some whipped cream, which I made off camera. Same whipped cream I usually make for my cakes. I don't think the whipped cream ultimately was necessary, but I mean, it didn't detract anything from the cake, you know what I'm saying? Now, the problem with this was that since I didn't get to level it, it was rather difficult initially to get the cakes to stand up straight when I stacked them on top of each other, because I did one right side up and the other upside down. But what I did was just leveled it as best I could and stuck a bubble tea straw in the middle, and that did what it needed to do. It was fine after that. And then I just did a crumb coat as even and as best as I could. Moving on to the topper. This part was fun. I used some gum paste. I rolled it out all thin and I had made, what do you want to call it? A frame out of skewers. And I lined it up with the gum paste, trimmed the sides, cut little, I don't know what you want to call it, gap, divot or whatever, so that I could wrap the sides around the horizontal parts of the structure with the skewers. And then I used a little bit of water to paste it down so that the gum paste would stick to itself. And that was a kind of a painstaking process, but I managed it. I decided to use a nearly empty paper towel roll to prop up what was going to be the top of it so that I could do the same process to the bottom. And I did this because I wanted it to have I didn't want it to lay flat. I wanted it to have a swoop, because this is what I did was made a sail. I didn't say that to start out. I should have. I made a sail, and I wanted the sail to have some motion to it. You know what I mean? Like the wind was blowing it from behind. So I propped that up on some paper towels in order to get that dip. And I let it dry like that for a few days before I did anything else with it. And of course, I did 2 of these because you always want to have a backup. When they were finally dry, I bought an airbrush machine, by the way. I was extremely nervous about this part. So I took the one sale that I was not the fondest of and decided to test the airbrush out on that. And also what I did off camera was made a stencil of sorts of that little Viking skull flag thing that is on Toothless's little mechanical tail thing. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I had fun testing out the airbrush. It was very exciting. I wanted to make the whole thing red, and then I put the little stencil down on the front as best as I could. I tried using tape, but of course, since it did have that movement and motion in it and the little dip and hill, it didn't really stick down as well. So I ultimately ended up having to hold it down with my fingers as I was using the airbrush. It could have gone better, but it did go well, I will say. And again, that's why you have multiple ones so that you can practice. And or if something goes wrong, you have another one. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, it was fun and it came out pretty decent. And this was like my favorite part of doing this cake, to be honest with you. I think when it comes to covering cakes with fondant, which we will get there, I hate that but using fondant and gum paste to make things like this, although sometimes it is tricky, is ultimately fun to figure out how to do. And when it comes out well, I get super excited. So for the second one, I did the same thing, but I decided to kind of get up at a higher angle just to kind of try to make sure that the color didn't get underneath the stencil as much, because it did a little bit on the first one. And they still weren't like crisp, clean lines, but you could very clearly see the design, and honestly, it was super cute. What I did do was go back in with some white food coloring. I had to wait to do this until after it had dried, but I went in with some white food coloring and kind of painted the Viking skull thing so that it could stand out a little bit more against the red. Okay, now I need to preface this next part by saying when I was making this cake, our AC was broken. It's the middle of winter. However, we do live in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was one of those weeks. Listen, we have not had very much of a winter this year, or this season, I should say, because it's 2023 now. And what that means is we've had more fall-like weather or spring-like weather than we have winter weather. And maybe sprinkled in there every few weeks, we might have had a week where it was like 20, 30 degrees. You know what I mean? This week that I decided to make the cake was in the 60s, 70s, middle of winter, and humid. And our AC was broken. So it was stifling hot the day that I decided to put this cake together. And if you make cakes, you know that you need a cool, dry place to make your cakes, and otherwise things are going to go hectically wrong. And that is what happened. I already hate covering cakes with fondant, but what happened was that it was hot, it was humid, and the buttercream that I used wasn't a solid buttercream because I added the cream cheese. So therefore, it did not solidify the way that it usually does. So everything was melting constantly and consistently as soon as I took those cakes out of the fridge. Now, my original plan was to do half black and half white tiers, and I wanted to do it at an angle. So I rolled out some black fondant and kind of just cut it in half and tried to lay it on the cake out of the covering the top but then wanted it to be a slant on the sides, you know what I mean? So that I could come in with the white fondant later up from the bottom, you know what I'm saying? I struggled so hard with this because the buttercream was so f***ing soft, it was getting everywhere. And the cake just was slowly melting like a popsicle in the sun. And I was sweating the entire time that I did this. It was a very uneven fondant job. It's all lumpy and whatnot, as you can see. And when it came to trying to trim the sides, it just really was not working. And when I pulled up those pieces, like half the frosting came with it. And you can see the distress on my face. It was terrible. I was not having a good time at this point. Not at all. I don't know if you're like me, but I get hot super easily. And because I was sweating this entire time, it was just stressing me out even more. Like it was not a fun process. I might give up on trying to cover cakes with fondant. Honestly, I don't even know. Because I really hate this part. I really hate it. And then all these little nuances got in the way of me creating the vision that I was going after. It's just a nightmare. Just a nightmare. Everything went downhill after this point. Oh my god. It's a mess. Look at it. It's a mess. Ridiculous. I was not happy with it. But I decided to truck forward anyways. Anyways, I rolled out some white fondant next and attempted to add it to the bottom that I had left alone. There was nothing about this that went well. Absolutely nothing. And I was pissed off the entire time. The cake, I feel like, started melting even faster as I was doing this. And the cuts weren't clean at all. And because the cake was melting and the fondant was going up the side, it had nothing to hold on to. So as I was trying to put it together, it kept sliding down the side and splitting away from the black fondant. And honestly, I didn't even get it big enough to get around the whole bottom. And at this point, I had no idea how I would even clean up that seam in between the white and the black. It was just a really hot mess, and it was not working out at all. And I patched it together as roughly as I could manage, and then threw that in the freezer, tried to save it, and it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And at that point, I was fully ready to give the up on this entire cake. I really, really was. So what I did was took all that fondant off and decided to switch gears and I decided I would just cover each tier with a solid sheet of fondant. But before I did that, I took a break. I'm doing this now because I need a break. I know by the time I get done with this cake, I'm not going to want to look at it anymore. I put the bottom tier in the freezer. I'm going to leave it there for a while. I need a pick-me-up, so we're doing this now. So I said that Hiccup reminded me of Pocky, and Toothless was burnt marshmallows. Really toasted marshmallows. And that them together make s'mores. So we're gonna try this out and see how this works. I got small ones and big ones. The small ones make sense, but I don't know if the Pocky's gonna be too fragile. We're gonna do both. How many do you think we should put on here? Let's do 4. You see? That's why. Jesus. Well, we got 3 on there. Don't try this at home. Here we go. That's what we want. And all of a sudden, she's excited again. Ooh, it smells like a campfire. I wish I had a campfire for real. That's so much fun. You get the idea of s'mores, but it's not like, oh yeah, that tastes exactly like s'mores, you know? Probably because the Pocky stick is just like a cracker. But the marshmallow, man, and the chocolate, Okay, let's do a big one. Have you done, who's done this before? Am I innovative? Did I invent this? It's not perfect, but the idea's there. You know, a gentler touch, maybe. But come on, like, look at this. Look. I feel so proud. Here we go. You want to get it to that point, and then you can, like, that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. This. That is toothless. I'm so smart. I am so smart. Damn. This is fine. I'm glad I stopped to do this. I feel better now. If the rest of the cake turns to chaos and I don't end up finishing it, at least I had this, you know? 2 thumbs up. The ratios aren't like, you know what? Let's try 2. And maybe that'll help the ratio of marshmallow to the rest. It broke. That looks sturdier, except last one. This is the last one. Then we'll return to the cake. Also, this just makes me feel hazardous and just like chaotic on its own, and I'm having fun with it. You know, it's taking out my frustrations. It's a work of beauty. Is it not? Damn. Adding another stick does help. Try this at home, but do it safely. Or maybe next time you do s'mores around the campfire, get some Pocky sticks. I give it a seal of approval. Moving on. So, it was a nice pick-me-up, but I had to unfortunately continue with this disaster of a cake. I did pour myself a glass of wine, just, you know, for the nerves. So what I did was I covered the top tier, 6-inch tier, in white fondant. This still was a hot mess because it was still hot and humid and just an entire disaster. So the covering of the cakes in solid fondant still did not go well. And just turned out like it was just so messy, and I was not proud of it at all. It was all crackling and everything, and I just kind of was like, whatever. We're just moving on. So I covered the bottom tier with black fondant. It pretty much came out the exact same way. And oh god, the bottom of both of these cakes was just looking an absolute hot mess. So what I had to do was figure out a way to cover that up. Because initially I initially did not have a way to cover that up planned out in my head. And we'll get to that in a second. What I decided to do once I had the cakes covered in fondant was I used the airbrush again. And it was always, you know, the plan to airbrush kind of like a... God. Please ignore Alan Rickman. I'm gonna... Ooh. So tempted to stop this video right now and just never make another one again. Anyway, I decided to do a dragon scale pattern on the cakes. It did not go the way that I planned exactly, but I was in a rush and I was already well and done with this cake, so I was like, whatever, I don't care. I had bought some stencils. I just held it up against the cake, very quickly brushed on some in a very random pattern, airbrushed it with black. As you can see, it got everywhere. But I did the same for both tiers, and then I went back again and used blue for, you know, that alpha glow that Toothless has at the end of the second movie and all of the third movie. And that, you know, that made it a little better. Still was not great. Not on its own anyway. You know what I mean? It did look better on the black one, I would say. Looked kind of cool. Anyhow. Okay. I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll be able to get the top tier on the bottom tier. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully everything goes well. Enough. It's not going to last long in this heat, so I'm going to be going as quickly as I can. I'm already kind of distraught. Alright. Let's do this. So yeah, like I was saying before, I had to figure out a way to cover up the bottom of each tier because I didn't originally have a plan to do that. But what I decided to do, I grabbed some extra foliage that I had left over from other projects, and I decided to cover the bottom tier with a bunch of leaves and some blue flowers. And then I was really trying to do this fast. So the adding of the leaves and stuff on the bottom, I just did in the fridge because I really wanted to keep the cakes cold as long as possible before I had to pull them all out and keep them out to decorate the rest of it. You know what I mean? It definitely looked better once I added the foliage to the bottom. I was not ready to put the top tier on the bottom tier, but I never am, to be honest. The whole thing ended up toppling over. Oh, Lord. Woo! One, two, three, here we go. Oh, Lord Jesus Christ. Centered enough. Let's get this done. What I did for the bottom of the top tier, or that in between, I had foliage for, I guess, the land, and then I was like, well, maybe I can do something to represent the sea, because there's a lot of water, you know? So I dyed some of the frosting blue, and just kind of did a really rough frost between the two layers to kind of get that wave effect, quote unquote. I don't know if it worked, but again, at this point, I was kind of done with it. Still standing. I'm still standing better than I ever did. Looking like a true survivor. Feeling like a little kid. Then I took some of the leftover whipped cream and added some sea foam. It kept dropping everywhere. Got it all over everything. Oh, shit. I'm still standing. Mostly. Yeah. Okay. Then came adding the topper, which was the part I was the most proud of. And I bought like a pack of 20 little miniature dragons from Amazon or whatever, and just did that little dragon tornado. There was no rhyme or reason to where I placed these dragons on the cake. I just stuck them all around in random places. And I was so flustered about all of this that I didn't even do the final like pan around of the cake to like get up close with the details or whatever. Ugh, so you don't get that bit today. Sorry. We did it! Oh, hang on. One more dragon. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time! No, wait! No, maybe. Time! Okay. Pictures! Now! Pictures now! For as much grief as this gave me, it looks pretty cool. Does it scream How to Train Your Dragon? I know this is a giveaway, but like, would you be able to, you know what? Who cares? Let's demolish this. and eat it so that we can be done, because I'm done. You know what? I'm not even sorry. Bye. Bye. For real though, I thought this was gonna be a giant fail. So I'm happy. I'm proud of it. I just never... Lessons learned. I never want to deal with this again. It better taste good. You would think it would, wouldn't you? Slice it. Look. Ridiculous. It's not even coming out clean. Damn. What? You look. Jesus Christ. This cake I think is dense, but let's try it and see what it actually tastes like. Trying to get everything in there. Ooh. Alright. Yeah. It's good. Damn. I mean, I'm not mad that it's good. I just... Why did it give me so much grief? Like, damn. Jesus. It's real cinnamony. The cake is quite dense, but it's not dry. I was worried that it would be dry, but it's not. The flavors work really well together. You don't get much apple, but I figured that would happen because they didn't put much on the top, and the cake itself, and it's like pretty thick. But I mean, like, I would be happy if somebody served this to me in a restaurant, you know? I pay money for it. I'm done! I'm done with you! Thanks for eating with me. The cake was dense, but it wasn't dry. It tasted good. That's all you really need to know. Golly. I am happy that it turned out halfway decent. It's not at all what I pictured in my head. Not even close to what I pictured in my head, to be honest. But I accomplished something. I had something to show, and it turned out halfway decent. To me, it kind of screamed more Land Before Time than How to Train Your Dragon, but who the cares? Not only was I well and done with that cake at that point, but at this point, I'm well and done with this video. So I don't have much else to say other than subscribe. Like the video if you like chaos. Come back for more. I'll have some in the future. Can't promise you when, because again, mental health is important, and I encourage you to keep up with your own. Take some time for yourself, as much as you need to kind of get yourself in whatever mind space you are required to be in order to get through life. So, I'll get there one day. I'm still standing better than I ever did. I'll see you in the next thing. Bye.